Right, then I will call the Water and Sewer Board meeting to order. A little late due to some technical difficulties, but we're up and running on Teams. Brenda, you want to take roll for us, please?
Board Member Freeman.
Present.
Board Member Jolie.
Present.
Board Member Kelly. Board Member Mercier. Board Member Ridley.
Present.
Council Member Russell.
Present.
Council Member Wright.
Present.
Mayor Sierra.
Present.
Vice Chair Bereski.
Present.
Chair Moore.
Present. All right. Thanks. Thank you, everybody, for the patience. Let's move on to item number 3, approval of the minutes from the June 10th board meeting. Can I get a motion to approve?
Motion so moved. Second.
Perfect. Any comments, edits, changes? All right. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. Brenda, do we have anyone from the public that would like to address us tonight?
We do not.
Okay. Moving on to item 5. I'll turn that over to Carol and Stephanie. 5A, sorry.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yes, coming through fine.
I'm Stephanie Ellis. I'm an engineer with Englewood Utilities, and myself and Carol Malesky, who's our Stantec senior principal. Stantec is our utilities rate consultant and also financial consultant. And we will be discussing the city ditch piping capital cost recovery methodology. I think you're all familiar with the city ditch and the city ditch piping project, but to provide some additional background, Englewood owns, operates, and maintains the city ditch between Chatfield Reservoir and Harvard Gulch Park in Denver. Through the city ditch piping project, we will be piping remaining open channel sections of city ditch between Chatfield Reservoir and the Allen Water Treatment Plant. There's numerous benefits to this project, including an improvement to water aesthetics, sustainability, resiliency, safety, and an overall reduction in other capital investments that we may need to help improve the taste, odor, and hardness of our water. This project has been going on for a number of years. We began the Phase 2 final design in 2023, and construction will begin this summer. There are a number of contract users along City Ditch who take water for irrigation purposes. These contract users take water in Littleton, Englewood, and Denver. They all have a fixed quantity of water that's set in their contract with Denver Water, who owns majority of the water in City Ditch, other than the water that Englewood takes through our own water rights. Our responsibility as Englewood is to operate and maintain the ditch and also ensure those contract users receive that fixed quantity of water at their head gate. Each year, the contract users reimburse us for the operation, maintenance, and other ditch improvements. This reimbursement, or the amount that each of those contract users reimburses us, is based on the proportional amount of water that they take relative to all of the water in the ditch. The City Ditch Piping Project will not only be a benefit to the City of Englewood, but it will also improve service for these contract users, as the ditch will be more reliable, less outages, and overall the maintenance will be reduced since it'll be a pipe system rather than open channel. We've been discussing the City Ditch Piping Project with contract users over the past few years, and we've discussed with them that the total Phase 2 final design and construction costs we may be requesting reimbursement from the contract users for those. And I will pass it over to Carol.
Thanks, Stephanie. And good evening, Chair and members of the board. I know I've spoken with you before, but this time today we're going to be talking about capital cost recovery for the city ditch expenditures. This methodology is based on a typical capital cost recovery approach that we often use for large capital expenses. In this case, we have a series of steps that we propose, and I'll show you the calculations, draft calculations for how this might roll out to the city ditch users. The series of steps starts out with the identification of total capital costs. Your engineering team provided us a series of those costs. Some were actual costs based on the completed project components, and some are projected bids. We took those capital costs, and then we determined the share of those costs between the city and the city ditch users based on the share of flows. This is similar to the approach that is used for the reimbursement of your O&M expenses for the city ditch. To allocate the total capital costs on a proportional basis between the city and the contract users, we take the total inches of water required after we have completed that calculation. At the latest calculations, we're looking at 8.21% of the capacity that would be allocated to the city ditch contract users. The remaining amount, the bulk of the amount, is for the city. The annual repayment that we calculate is based on almost like an amortization schedule for a loan. We're looking at a period of time for the city to recover its capital cost from the city ditch users. And that recovery period is entirely a policy decision for the city. So we're looking at anywhere between 5 to 10 years of capital cost recovery. Of course, there's always an option for a city ditch user to pay for its share all at once. That would be preferable. But the
Carol, can I interrupt you for just 1 second? I just want to check online. Are you seeing? Oh, there we go. I just want to make sure you were seeing the slide deck. Okay, thank you, Carol. Go ahead.
Oh, I do have it on my other screen. I wasn't able to see it, so I was hoping that. Okay. Thank you very much. That's better. Okay. So the cost recovery period that we're looking at is between 5 to 10 years, or that one-time payment. In looking at an appropriate term for this type of loan to the users, we are looking at interest rates ranging from 2.7% per year to 3%. So the city would be earning a return on the cash that you have invested in the system. That 2.7 to 3% is equivalent to what the state revolving fund loan typically offers for these types of loans. And it is a discount on the U.S. Treasury rate. So the 2.7% is associated with a 5-year loan. A 3% interest rate is associated with a 10-year loan. When we use these types of terms for the capital cost repayment, we calculate a cost per unit of flow. We typically charge customers on a cost per unit of flow or an annual cost per year. We could recalculate that unit rate if other contract customers join or if additional capital improvements are needed. So it's pretty flexible. But where we stand today is a pretty straightforward approach. The next slide shows a sample calculation. We're calling this an example of the results because the costs are pretty close, but once they get finalized, we can recalculate this. And as the terms are decided on by the city, we can also recalculate. The little table to the upper left shows the allocation of those costs. Out of approximately $12.17 million for the whole project, we're looking at those 8.21% allocated to the city ditch users. That would be just under $1 million, $999,491. The remaining amount gets recovered through the city's own customers. So out of that, just shy of $1 million, we show on the right-hand side of this slide two ways to recalculate a repayment. The first way would be a 5-year repayment at the 2.7% interest rate. An annual amount would be $216,377 for that whole payment. So then we would divide by the inches of water required by the user to get that unit cost. On the right-hand side of this table is the cost for the 10-year loan, or the 10-year repayment. And that, of course, is a longer period of time, but the payment is slightly less at $117,171 in total. Again, we would divide that by the inches of water required to get our unit cost. It's a pretty straightforward approach. I'd be happy to answer any questions about that approach, but we'd like to hear your thoughts on that methodology.
Carol, this is John. It makes sense. Did you say it's the users? Is it the user's choice about whether to finance or one time? Or is it we make a decision and everyone's under the same 5, 10, or 0 schedule?
I'd like to turn that question over to Peter.
Yeah, I'll take that. So we're offering the option if a contract user wants to pay it all at once, we'll let them do it. If they want to do a 10-year, we'll let them do it. So this is really, it comes down to what the contract user, what works for their budgets and their planning and their financial plans, so that we give them some options, since this is a cost that might not have been something that they were foreseeing for a long period of time, although we've been talking about it for a few years with them. So it's not a surprise to them. Just as a comparison, so I think many of you know that the City of Englewood has ownership in Meadow Creek Reservoir. That's part of our mountain system. And as part of that, there's a 13-mile pipeline that's associated with it. It's like a 30-inch pipeline, and that's all part of the city's owned system. But Denver operates it. And so when Denver contacts us and says, we need $300,000 to rehab the manholes, we just provide that because they're a partner in operating the system, but they control the operation of the system. So we have to react when they say that they're going to make a capital investment or they're going to make an operations investment. And so this is very similar, except we own the ditch this time, and those users are looking to us, and we want to make sure that we're proportionately we're apportioning those costs appropriately based on the use of the ditch for everybody that does use the ditch.
Any further questions? Go ahead.
Sorry, can't see behind me. My question is, for the 11 plus $1 million, how is that cost for the city going to be paid? That 3% or possible 2.7%, is that going to slide downhill to an increase to our end users, the customers?
This project will be funded from and it has already been budgeted for, and also the construction of it was actually just approved last month by the Water and Sewer Board and last night by City Council for reaches 2 and 3. So it's already been budgeted for and it's accounted for in our utilities rates and fees, including that capital improvement fee.
It's in the water fund budget. Okay. This is charging extraterritorial users that are contract users on the ditch. So we're funding it because we've had it planned in our capital program for the last 4 years as a project. So it's funded with rates and fees and fund balance and things like that. It's in our capital plans.
Just want to make sure. Thanks.
And I have a question also, John, is that okay?
Oh, absolutely, please.
So I noticed that we're not going to charge them their fee until 2027, is that correct? What is the reason that we're waiting that long? If we knew that, did we not notify them, or?
Yeah, so a couple of reasons for that. So the costs are not all completely known yet because we haven't started construction. Reach 2 is under redesign, and we're not under contract for that yet. So we need the costs and construction to be finalized to know what those final costs are in order to charge them. In addition, we wanted to have this conversation now and also discuss it with the contract user so that they can budget for it.
Okay, and then since we're paying it up front, we'll just recoup it later. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, and that's similar to what we do for our annual operations and maintenance and other improvements to the ditch. Is throughout the year we are operating, we're paying those costs, and then at the beginning of the following year we're able to charge the contract users for all of those previous year costs.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and so that's why we're giving the three options. So if a user wants to just pay it all at once and just then we're not out anything in terms of like holding the note, for lack of a better term. If they want to do a 5-year or a 10-year, we give them the flexibility to be able to build it into a longer term capital plan, and we are like the bank that draws interest on that loan, and we're using a modest interest rate that matches the other interest rates that we pay. So we're not looking to make a bunch of money, but we're also not looking to lose money because they're all contract users on this ditch with us.
Right, okay, thank you.
Any further questions?
Yes. So can you refresh my memory? How much was the interest rate that we were paying on the loans that has handled in this project?
So actually, there's no loans handling this project. So this project is not utilizing any of the WIFIA funds, and it's not utilizing any of the SRF funds.
Okay. So what is the percentage of the water that is used for the contractors?
So majority of the water that's utilized is Englewood's every year. And we had mentioned that 8.21%, that's what we approximate for what the contract users would be, their percentage of it versus Englewood's. When we were going through this analysis, as we've discussed previously with the city ditch piping project, that will increase our capacity in the ditch and our ability to take more water through it. And so we assumed a future scenario where Englewood is maximizing our usage of city ditch, and in order to fairly assess the contract users' costs.
Is waste management part of these contractors?
No.
So can you give me an example of who would be these contractors, please?
Yeah, so the contract users are, so some are individuals with their homes, others are larger entities like golf courses. So Cherry Hills Country Club, for example, is an example of one that takes water from City Ditch to water the golf course.
And that's our largest contract user is Cherry Hills Golf. And so it's anybody who had a water right way back when City Ditch was apportioning water rights. And so it could be individual homeowner, property owners that have a water right that's retained with their property. They're a contract user. And so they pay their proportionate share to continue to use the facilities so that they can access that water right that's probably been theirs for 130 years or more. And so what are there, eight or total contract users? 14. So there's 14 contract users. And so the biggest one is a golf course, the smallest one's an individual home. And it's a variety of other users in between those two sizes.
Since you mentioned some of these residential, why would a residential person wants to be a contractor? I mean, is this how big their residency is, or?
This is probably a legacy property that was here before either one of the cities developed, that was an original ranch home that had a water right associated with their home. And so that property has the water right that's a component of that property right that they've never sold, they've never eliminated or gotten rid of. Actually, last year we came to you because there was a half a share on a ditch that was, again, a similar type of, it was an individual family that owned it, and they said, we don't need it anymore. And so they contacted us, and we paid them for that half a share because it took care of another share and put it under Englewood's control. And so there's what, eight or so of the, how many of the individual homeowners are there? It's not many, right? Roughly.
Yeah, probably maybe about half.
Yeah, so maybe half of the 14. So those are legacy, probably ranches from 100 years ago when they had a water right.
Thank you so much for solving that mystery in my head. Thank you so much.
All right. Any further questions? All right. Can I get a motion to approve the updated city ditch contract user cost recovery methodology which incorporates the capital cost for the city ditch piping project as presented by staff and Stantec Consulting.
I move the motion.
Thank you. Perfect. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you. 5B. Losing track. Tyler. Thank you. 5B.
Thank you. My name is Tyler Ellis. I'm the Stormwater Program Manager in the Public Works Department. And today we'll be presenting on some proposed updates to our storm drainage criteria manual and city code regarding the stormwater requirements. So a little history of the storm drainage criteria manual. Our current storm drainage criteria manual was drafted in 2020. And this was generally a response to the 2018 storm events that occurred in the city. And the manual does, our city requirements are more stringent than what is the minimum required by the state. And that was the big kind of update from the original manual was 2025, I believe, to that 2020 manual. This is the document that determines what stormwater criteria projects must follow in the city, both during construction and after construction. And it is adopted in our city code section 12510. Staff this year has worked with American Company to provide review service and help us complete this manual update. And we will be presenting this at a future Stormwater Town Hall. When the presentation was drafted, that had not been scheduled yet. But we have scheduled that for August 5th. So you may be asking why revisions needed. 2020 wasn't incredibly long ago, but we did need to revise the manual. And the biggest revisions that were made were really just to many grammatical errors that were throughout the manual. Some incorrect or missing references. We did revise some definitions for clarity and consistency. We wanted to improve the readability. We've had some complaints dealing with some developers that it's hard to interpret. And then even allowing electronic submittals in the manual. Currently, it requires hard copies, but we do accept those electronic submittals. We did have to make some additional updates that will affect developments and projects in the city, and this was for compliance with our MS4 permit. We just need to better define our permitting and compliance requirements for different types of projects. We also wanted to better establish some thresholds and clarify our city stormwater requirements. This regarding subdivided lots, how to process through a variance request if you needed one, and then just really kind of lining up some of our permitting thresholds. We did also want to adopt some exemptions into our manual. These exemptions are allowed and referenced in the MS4, our Phase 2 MS4 permit issued by the state. But without adoption into the manual or city code, we actually can't apply these to our projects. So really just a code cleanup. But there will be some effects of that on projects. And then we also wanted to or needed to revise our appendices and some attachments. The 2020 manual had incorrect numbered appendices, some outdated information, and then we did redo our small lot development form for just a better improved user experience. It was just a PDF that users had to fill out with pen and paper, but we have created a Excel spreadsheet that does the math and is fillable and kind of checks some of the errors there. So in the packet, there has been a track change version of the entire manual, but for the sake of this presentation, I'm going to focus on the changes made with the MS4 compliance, some of our updating thresholds, and then those exemptions. So just some summary of the highlighted changes. The first section I'd like to highlight is the 2.3, which is our submittal section. The current manual requires a drainage report or letter and a permanent stormwater quality plan for all projects and to get a grading permit. We did want to, or we're proposing to add or modify to allow a project if it's just a demolition only. So, they're demolishing an existing structure with plans to build a future structure. We do want to allow them to proceed with getting a grading permit without that drainage reporter letter and permanent stormwater quality plan. And this is because often the demolition phase of the project, the plans aren't as well developed at that point, and they're often dealing with different contractors. However, we need to issue a grading permit so we have some compliance control over that property to make sure any sediments not leaving the site, there's no tracking into the city right away, and generally being good stewards to neighbors. And then this still would require that drainage letter or report and a post-construction permanent stormwater quality plan before they get their building permit or do any actual construction. So really just making sure that we have some level of oversight and compliance authority during that demolition phase. The next update we are proposing to that 2.3, this middle section, is to add a 30-day staff review window for plans. Currently, there is no timeline in the manual. We do almost always review these plans quicker than that 30-day time frame, but we did want to allow staff adequate time if they're very complicated or intricate projects that may need that time. The next section I want to highlight of our proposed changes is the 2.10 section. This is for our stormwater management plan. This is for construction. So this is during the building, during that land disturbance and that construction phase. Currently, we require that stormwater management plan, so your erosion sediment controls, your perimeter controls for sites that are 10,000 square feet of land disturbance or when soil has been exposed for more than 60 days. We are proposing to lower this threshold to 5,000 square feet of land disturbance and state that they do need a grading permit. The reason behind this is really generally a manual code cleanup because the submittals require the project to have a stormwater management plan and get a grading permit if they're 5,000 square feet or greater. So there's a discrepancy in those two sections. So we really just want to make sure they align, avoid any confusion, and then add that, make sure the grading permit is clear and easy to understand. The next section I would like to highlight is the 2.11. This is our permanent stormwater quality plan, which is our post-construction stormwater plan. So this is after a project has been built, what kind of components or features are there to reduce their runoff flows or kind of detain some of that runoff to, prevent it from overwhelming our infrastructure. And the proposed change in this section is to adopt those exclusions as referenced in the MS4 permit. And I will be discussing these exclusions on the next slide. So I know there's probably some questions on what those are. And once again, kind of viewing this as more of a code cleanup is that these exclusions do need to be in our manual and adopted to apply to our projects. Once again, these are pretty standard throughout many jurisdictions and localities. The next section is that same 2.11. So this is our post-construction stormwater management quality plan. And currently, we require a record drawing or an as-built before they are issued a certificate of occupancy. And we are proposing to add that these requirements to submit an as-built occurs before we terminate their grading permit. And then add that they need to supply GIS and AutoCAD files with that as-built drawing. And this is, the reason behind this is just to provide kind of extra oversight and a safeguard to ensure we are receiving these as-builts. The certificate of occupancy is generally handled by the building department, but the grading permit is actually issued through the public works department. So just to make sure we have that ability to kind of control our permits and make sure we're getting those. And then requiring the GIS and AutoCAD files is so we can kind of digitally reference these as-built, so we can know where our easements are, where our stormwater facilities are, where any improved infrastructure is. So as we kind of redevelop or get new projects, we're easy to reference and know where they are. Currently, we have just a backlog of a lot of paper plans. So this will kind of bring us into the modern era. And then the last section is our 3.6. This is our detention and stormwater quality section. This kind of establishes what project thresholds require what type of detention or other stormwater requirements. And then we are proposing to just add a section in that chart to state that if the project applies or meets the exclusion requirements, they are actually exempt from the stormwater detention and other quality requirements. Once again, we're kind of viewing this as more of a cleanup, just to kind of make sure all the requirements are transparent, they're in our manual, and we are able to apply them to this project. So I wanted to take some time to kind of highlight a couple these exclusions, as well as an additional code revision that we are proposing. So these MX4, these exclusions I've been mentioning are part of our MS4 permit. And if you're not familiar with the MS4 permit, it's a municipal separate storm sewer system. It's originally issued by the EPA, delegated to the state, and then the state delegates that authority to each locality to kind of, while we have to meet those minimum standards, we can go above and beyond and kind of shape it so your program meets, something appropriate for the size of your city. But these exclusions are stated in the state permit, but we just have to adopt them in order to apply those. So I'll highlight a couple, and I guess to take a step back, these exclusions would mean if the project meets the characteristics or the thresholds, they do not have to do post-construction stormwater. So they wouldn't have to do a detention pond or a bioretention facility. They have been deemed by the state to have a minimal impact on stormwater runoff or quality if constructed to meet those standards. So I'll highlight a couple. The first three are involving roadway projects and pavement management sites. So that is a mill and overlay project. So you're ripping up pavement and replacing it as is, has no negative impact on your stormwater system, and this exemption would prevent that project from needing to put a stormwater facility or pond associated with that. And same with the roadway redevelopment. If we are excavating a road, taking it down to subsurface, removing everything and rebuilding it, as our manual states now, that would require post-construction stormwater quality, but if these exemptions are adopted, they wouldn't need it. So therefore, we're just putting the road back as it is. It is not having a worse adverse effect. The next one I'd like to highlight is the above ground and underground utilities. So a lot of utilities are trenched, utilities installed, the trench is backfilled, and then either covered back with pavement or grass. So ultimately, the end result does not have a negative impact on stormwater. So therefore, if that project meets these criteria, it would not require that post-construction stormwater management. Another one I'd highlight is the trails exemption or exclusion. So right now, if we are building a shared use trail or a new kind of nature trail, it would require post-construction stormwater management after it's built. But generally, these are very low impact. The amount of impervious surface you're dealing with is not it's not a lot, and would not have a negative impact on the system. And also, we encourage trails. They get people out in nature, they explore our open spaces. So if these are adopted, projects of that would be excluded from post-construction stormwater management. And then the final part I would like to highlight that we are proposing to change is in our city code section 1259. And this is actually our illicit discharge detection and elimination code. Right now we have a lot of activities that, so illicit discharge is any non-stormwater runoff that enters the storm sewer system is actually illicit and not allowed. So we would like to add to this section to update that discharges in accordance with the CDPHE, so Colorado Department of Public Health and the Environment, low-risk discharge policy guidance documents would be allowed in the city. These are documents the state has worked on. They're kind of constantly evolving, and these are activities that they have deemed have a low impact or low risk to water quality of the downstream. So if they enter the storm sewer system, they aren't illicit and allowed. And the two I'd like to highlight that would affect the city is, surface cosmetic pressure washing operations to land. So you can think of this if someone is pressure washing their house that runs off into grass, that would be an allowable activity, an allowable discharge. Currently, that is classified as an illicit discharge in the city. And then another one I'd highlight is impervious trail building. So this would be a nature trail that's dirt and not pavement or asphalt. If rain hits that trail, makes the soil run off, and that entered the storm sewer system, that would actually be an illicit discharge. However, that's very low impact and a low risk to the actual system. So we do think it's appropriate to adopt these, and we would like to do the low risk policy guidance documents because as they are constantly created, we can apply those to the city without having to revise the city code. So Public Works staff is seeking a Water and Sewer Board recommendation for City Council to approve the proposed revisions to the Englewood Storm Drainage Criteria Manual and City Code Section 1259 to include discharges in accordance with the Colorado Department of Health and the Environment low-risk discharge policy guidance documents. And with that, I would take any questions.
I have a question,
Yes.
please. It says large lot, single family sites.
Yes.
What is the rule for small lot, single family sites?
So currently, our storm drainage manual sets that threshold at single family homes on lots larger than 6,000 square feet. So the standard lot size, we do have some variability in our lot size, but generally there's about 60 to 50 as a general residential lot in the city. So a single family home on those would be exempt per our manual. The exclusion in the MS4 permit is for properties over 1 acre. So the MS4 permit requires any development over 1 acre to meet that stormwater requirements. So that would mean if we had a single family home on a property larger than 1 acre, it would not require stormwater management.
We don't have many of those.
Correct.
or any
Yes,
of
I
those.
don't anticipate. But once again, kind of incorporate them all. So as adopt those exclusions into the manual.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Any additional questions? All right. Could I get a motion for item 5B as written?
Motion.
Second.
Great. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. Moving on to 6A. Stephanie, back to you.
We will be discussing next the City Ditch revised IGA with Littleton. We brought to you last month several agreements with the City of Littleton for the City Ditch piping project Reach 3 construction. Majority of the Reach 3 pipeline for the City Ditch is going to be located on City of Littleton property. One of those agreements that we discussed with you last month was an intergovernmental agreement with Littleton. And since then, City of Littleton has further discussed the agreement with their City Council and their Historic Preservation Commission and also internally, and they requested one modification to it. Majority of the terms in the IGA are going to be the same as what we discussed last month. Those include that this agreement will be effective during construction only. It includes a tree mitigation fee of $216,000 or $216,500, and also the stabilization of the ditch bank on the old city ditch after construction is complete. The proposed modification to the IGA relates to the overhead flume that currently conveys water over Slaughterhouse Gulch. The original IGA that we brought to you included a term for the city of Englewood to demolish that flume, but save a piece of it for the city of Littleton to commemorate the history of City Ditch with it. City of Littleton requested the option for them to preserve or remove the flume, and City of Englewood to reimburse them up to $100,000 for that. And so with this revised IGA, it could be either option. Littleton can preserve or remove the flume with with Englewood's reimbursement, or Englewood will demolish the flume and save a piece for Littleton. Anybody have any questions?
So I'd like to add one thing. This is Sarah Stone. So Stephanie, you go back to the $100,000. So in the IGA that you all saw last month, there was already an amount in there for the contractor to remove the flume. I believe it was around $76,000. So it's not a huge increase to allocate $100,000 in this IGA for Littleton's option.
Any questions?
Questions.
All right.
So the difference in the, $24,000 or so, is it because they believe it will cost that much, or did they just want a cushion in that amount?
Stephanie, I'll take that one. That's just discussions I had with the city manager at Littleton to help be good partners in this project. And so as we were talking about what it would take to help them work with their historic preservation groups and really have flexibility with the flume, and when we were looking at a $12 million project and trying to be a good partner, because they are dedicating a whole lot of right-of-way for us, so they've been a good partner. It was an easy thing to just to help them achieve their goals while we're achieving our goals. So it came through discussions I had with the city manager.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
This is Tammy. Real quick with a question. Is that a to not exceed amount, 100,000?
Yes, it is. And City of Littleton will have to provide us with some sort of receipt or proof of what that cost will be for us to reimburse them up to that amount.
Some backup documentation. Okay. Thank you.
Any further questions? All right. Can I get a motion for item 6B or 6A as written?
So moved.
Second.
Wonderful. Any further discussion? Right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. Moving on to staff's choice. Peter and Sarah?
Yeah, we'll both be doing this. I'll take the first part, and then I'll turn it over to Sarah to take the second half of this. So thank you, Chair, and thank you, board members. We just wanted to come and provide an update. We're about a year into the lead removal project, and we thought it'd be a good time to just give an update of where we've been and how we're progressing and what we have ahead of us. And so that's what we're here with this item tonight, is just informational for the board to understand the progress on the lead program. I'm sure everyone has seen it throughout the course of the city. If they're driving through the city, you're probably seeing it. So we're here to help you understand where we're at and where we're going. So first thing I want to do is, this is an extensive project team that is coordinating what is actually the largest project that the city has undertaken in the water system in a few decades. And so on the Englewood team, we have Sarah, who's the overall program manager, and then Josh, who's also helping Sarah. So Josh helps more in the field, and Sarah helps more of the programmatic. But they're both basically they're leading this on behalf of the city. Then you have Ryan, who's on Josh's team, and Omar and Evelina. We're all providing various amounts of in-house support. Ryan and Omar are in the distribution and collection system. This hits the distribution and collection system, and so having their expertise and knowledge and responsiveness actually is really been beneficial. So then we move over to our contractor, and that's AGL. And on AGL, we have a couple of project managers, and Adam and Brody, and then general and superintendent, who's generally the on-site person, and Miguel. And so the Englewood team and the AGL team are in lockstep, but it's not only them. We also have Hazen. Hazen is our program manager, and several of our Hazen colleagues are in the audience today. So Steve Price is our program manager. So So Steve gives us essentially one point of contact for Sarah to communicate with as it relates to overall programmatic approach. So Steve is that connection into the horsepower that is Hazen and all the resources that they provide is from a program management perspective. And you have Jasmine, who is the deputy PM, who's been instrumental in public meetings and the models and the outreach and things like that. And so they've really helped bring the programmatic approach of this forward and made that work. And so then you have Kevin, who's ArcGIS and data management, Jenna, who's data management and inventory, Grayson, who's out in the field, and then Kylie, who's helps with our program communications. And incidentally, Kylie also just helps us as support in our customer service and billing office. So she's somewhat doing dual duty for us, since I think many of you have recalled that we're recently having a challenge with our billing system. So she's provided a lot of support on that. So we appreciate her help there. So here's basically the timeline. We kicked off in March of 2023, started the inventory in July of 2023. So that's when we really started figuring out, how big, what's the magnitude of our problem here. Program launched with outreach in August, and then verification. We did some ordinance changes, and then started the field verification. And then ultimately, one of the most critical aspects of this is in December 2023, we closed the loan that helps to pay for all this, and that included the bipartisan infrastructure law grant of $10 million, which helps to really support our ability to remove and replace the entire reach of the line, including the customer side. And so that grant funding has really helped us do that. So then we put forward an RFP, and then again, changed some more ordinances, and then got the loan approved and so we applied in December, got the loan approved in May, and then got the contract underway in June, and really started rolling in July of last year, so about a year ago. Wrong button. So then in July started construction. Then we had the visit from our senator in September, highlighting the bipartisan infrastructure law money that is funding a lot of this project. And then we added a component to this, which is insertion valves, and that's where you see in the upper right there. So these insertion valves is a technology that allows us to put a new valve in while the line is pressurized and doesn't require a shutdown. And so what that's done is we put 91 of those in, and what that helps us do is isolate a lot more reliably so that we minimize outages when we're shutting down reaches of the street. In May of this year, we replaced our 1,000th line. So we've done 1,000, where I think what's our current number? Well, Sarah will tell you our current number in a minute. And then we also, in June, started our concerted work on Broadway, which is all those commercial properties down Broadway between Hamden and Bellevue. So we are tracking our customer contacts. So we've had 3,884 points of contact, and this is the distribution of how they've been. So 62% of those are positive, 35% are neutral, and we have a few that are negative. And so we keep trying to drive that 3% down, but from a macro perspective, the amount of disruption that this project creates, it really gives us good data that we're really trying to minimize that impact to our customers and that disruption. We've done 22 public events, 8 community meetings, 2 Celebrate Englewoods, 2 SPR Waterfest, 10 neighborhood nights. So we're really, really trying to get out in the community, so it's no surprise to anybody when we're on their block and we're replacing lead service lines. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Sarah, who's going to talk about where we are from an actual on-the-ground construction progress. So Sarah, that's all yours.
All right. Thank you, everyone. So I will just mention that in the room here, we have maps that we've handed out. I emailed that map to everybody. So hopefully online you can see that as well. We'll refer to the zones that's on those maps. So active zones that we are currently in progress with here in 2025. So this timeline is showing 3 separate zones that we are in. So the central south zone is zone 2, and that is for zone 2 and zone 3, which is the central west zone. That timeline shown at the bottom there. It's on the it's west of Broadway. For zone 2, it's for Oxford south to Bellevue. Zone 3, it's west of Broadway, 285 south to Oxford. So this shows the main pieces of when we go into a zone. So we begin construction. However, backing up before that, we are sending out by mail postcards to every single resident in those zones saying the program is coming. And if you have a home that was built before 1960, you will get a pothole that will verify your service line material. So all of that is done before we get into the zone. That communication happens. Then we start potholing and identify the replacements and start the inventory there. Construction, continues block by block as much as we can to minimize disruption, and then we move into data closeout. So for these 2 zones, particularly important in 2025, is that Public Works has mill and overlay and slurry seal streets that they want to complete this year. So we are working to close out those 2 zones by July 15th, and we are on track to do that. We also ended up breaking out Broadway as its own separate zone. As we got into Broadway, we realized that there were several more replacements than we had planned. We did potholing of all the pre-1960 properties, and then we realized that there's actually more that are post-1960. So I'll get into that a little bit later. So we are back for our second round of replacements in Broadway currently. The replacement should be complete this week, and then paving will happen after that, likely next week. 285 to Bellevue. Yes, 285 to Bellevue. So Peter had mentioned insertion valves. This is something that we had not planned as a part of this project, but last summer, I believe it was, there was a break, a water line main break near Broadway that couldn't be controlled. We had to basically let it flow a little while until we could get some valves put in place. So we stopped these high-risk areas where we were doing replacements and said, let's figure out a way to control the system and install these valves that will help do that. So there were 91 valves that were critical. These are shown on the map on the right, the dots. Many of them are along Broadway. For a total cost of $3.4 million. So that cost, we had to go back to the SRF program and essentially apply to use those funds for that particular expense. Included in that, and this was the amendment, and we brought that to Water Sewer Board and to Council earlier this year. Included in that were the darker lines that you see here that may be replaced if there's funds available as a part of the SRF loan at the end of the lead reduction program.
And I'd just like to chime in here. Sarah glossed over that process pretty quickly, but that was a substantial process to work through with the state to incorporate this work as well. And so she makes it look easy, but there was a lot of work behind the scenes that made this possible. And so it's good and it's the right thing to do. And it's helped us with the programmatic control of the system. So, okay, thank you.
So program-wide service line progress, we've verified 3,876 lines to date. And we have replaced, as of yesterday, 1,119 service lines. So you could have a little picture of some of the data tracking that we do. So this is a dashboard that's shared between AGL and Hazen, and these numbers are updated every so often. So this was as of yesterday. We have up to 8,000 service lines to continue to verify. Based on our modeling, we believe that the replacements are around 2,700 for the whole city. So we're about a third of the way there. So a Zooming in on the south central zone, again, 1,238 service lines that required verification, and 364 of those replacements were required. So you'll see on the middle there where the replacement progress is 359. We are actually complete in this zone. There have just been customers that have either declined potholing or they've declined replacements. So for those customers, we've replaced from the main to the curb stop or meter pit, which is the city's responsibility. For those customers that have declined, they will then get put in our tracking system so that when that house is sold, the property owner is informed that they need to replace their customer side service line. Central's west zone, 707 lines requiring verification. We've done 289 replacements. We also did a sample size of post-1960 residential properties in this zone. We potholed about 150 of those homes that were built post-1960 in order to really confirm that we have the correct date for when we think lead was used as service lines in the city, and we're happy to report that there were no lead hits in this area. So I think that we can safely say that we're potholing the correct homes for the citywide.
And just to let you know what prompted that. So when we got on Broadway and we went pre-1960 construction date for the property on Broadway, we went to the county records, gives a pre-1960 date. And what we found is the county records may update that construction date based on a redevelopment or a substantial remodel or something on the property, where the property never actually, they reconnected to the old lead service line. And so when we went back and discovered this, we determined that there were 20 more that needed replacement that were post 1960 according to the records, but because of the way the property redeveloped, it connected to the old lead service line. So we've made sure we've captured everything. We're going to have to go back through towards the end of the project. We're going to have to go back through the northern part of Broadway as well, because we're going to have to do the same thing. And we also reached out to Denver, and Denver found the same thing on some of these older corridors. So Broadway, Federal. Some of these commercial corridors where properties may have redeveloped over the last 50 years or so, and we want to just make sure that we're happy that we figured this out, and it's caused a little bit of a disruption to how we plan to phase Broadway, but we should be done by the end of the week, I think, right? Is that right?
That's the plan. So okay. Some of that information is here on this slide. I'll just mention that the short duration of closures, we are moving through Broadway this week, and that traffic control is moving depending on where they are to make these 20 additional replacements. It's not like 2 weeks ago we were in a confined 2-block area. We're having to move because there's 2 up here, there's 2 down below. So it's taking us a little bit little more disruption when we had planned to finish replacements along Broadway. Like Peter mentioned, there were 20 additional, and we are assuming that we will be done with those this week, and then we'll be back to patch the holes in Broadway next week. So we've had various obstacles that we are continuing to work to overcome, potholing and verifying service line materials with our model and our data accuracy. So the north central zone, I believe, on the map, that was our first zone that we started with, zone number 1. We realized that there were some gaps in the data, and in order to close out that zone, we will have to return, but we put that on pause in order to move to zones 2 and 3 to accommodate public works schedule for mill and overlay and slurry seal. But through that zone, we did realize that there were some gaps in data, and so we're working to clean that up. graffiti and patching. So there's signs, and there's a couple in the picture here that folks it'll get tagged any time of day. So we try to catch those. We drive through them daily. Our program team drives through them daily to try and catch signs that have graffiti on them and replace them as soon as we can. Again, with patching, there's a temporary patch, and then AGL comes back later and does a permanent patch. So those temporary patches, depending on how long they've been there, they can degrade and need some kind of maintenance to them even before a full patch is made. So we drive those daily as well. Customer coordination, we have changed our outreach between the first zone and these next zones to streamline that, so that what we realized when we sent to the first zone the customer outreach packet was there was a lot of confusion, because it was a full packet going to homes that had been built post 1960, and they didn't need all that information necessarily about their lead line replacement. So we've really streamlined how we're communicating with customers, and think that that's been a great improvement. Again, data accuracy. One of the things that we did with the zones we moved into earlier this year is Hazen and AGL will do a pre-walk. So they will walk every single block, understand where the service line is, make sure that it's also showing up in our GIS as well as in our billing data, so that there's no gaps in missing any service lines. The other thing that we continue to do on a daily basis is partner with Public Works to ensure that our detours and the access to residential streets is maintained as crews are moving through the streets. And then again, for customer potholing, if there's any resistance to that from a customer as AGL is moving through their block, before we close out a zone, we do final outreach, and that is done by our distribution and collections staff to make sure that every single resident has that opportunity to talk to a city staff person, and we can walk them through that process if they have any reservations about participating in the lead program. So as I've mentioned, program coordination, these are zones 2 and 3 shown on the right, and the streets are, the red streets are the mill and overlay, and the blue are slurry seal streets that Public Works plans to do this year. And then of course, Broadway, we're getting in and out of Broadway in advance of the Complete Streets project. So we have worked extensively with Public Works to make sure that we are getting out of these areas before they're ready to start. We also will have to do the same with other agencies. So on the map, you'll see Zone 11, I think it is, it's the outside city areas that they're very small areas that we also serve. And there's other Public Works departments that we work with and coordinate with to ensure that if we need to come in and do lead line replacement, that we're within, any number of, if they have some type of moratorium on like a mill and overlay, we want to make sure that we're not disrupting their paving program. So from a financial perspective, we've spent about 30% of the program budget as of July. So that's $11.7 million. So that is replacements with AGL, insertion valves, the paving operations, all of that is part of AGL's contract. And then that also includes the program management payment to Hazen. And as a reminder, the program budget total is $40 million. The contingency funds that are included in those contracts are still available and can be used for any unexpected expenses. And as of this point in time, the project remains on budget. Looking ahead, so as I mentioned, we're almost out of these zones 2 and 3. We will be moving to the south zone. That's the zone number 4, the very south end of the city. That only has about 50 replacements. So we're anticipating that's maybe a week or 2 of work once we get into that south zone. Zone 5, the northwest zone, that's quite a bit bigger zone. We're anticipating upwards of 425 replacements. And as we're doing those two zones, we will also be getting back into the north central zone, so zone 1, to finalize any data gaps and complete those replacements in that zone. We anticipate verification across the entire city will be completed by the end of 2025, and then program completion as of this moment is anticipated by the end of 2026. We also anticipate that we'll bring a third construction contract back to renew with AGL in the fall of 2025, just depending on their rate of replacements through the rest of the summer. With that, I'll open it up for any questions.
Any questions for Sarah?
Yes, I do. So did you mention that zone 11? So zone 11 is the one that is under zone 6, and there is a portion of it under.
Correct. So zone 11 is anything outside of the city boundaries.
You can also see there's some little squares in the Sheridan area. Those are other areas that we provide service.
Those little things are also.
Yep. That's because of the water service area is larger than the city boundary for the water utility.
All right. I think that might be it. Thanks for the update.
Okay, I have a question, please.
Yes.
Thank you. I live in southwest area, so zone 10. And there's a lot of older homes there. On my block, actually, at the top of my block and across the street, one of the houses is the original country store, I believe. And then the other was the house. It's an odd little house, but it was the original house for the farmland there. So they were built in the 1800s. I talked to one of the families there. They've been there since 2016 or so. They're not sure if they have lead lines or not. They know under the ground part, because of a line break, they changed the lead to copper, but they don't know the rest and they're worried. Looking at this, the whole section 10 looks like it's all green, but they're concerned, how do we know for sure? So when you get to area 10, is utilities going to be doing the potholing over there to confirm? And this is something I've been asked over and over again. I know we've talked offline.
We're doing the same thing we do the only reason it's green is because we had to come up with different colors for the zones. So it's not an indication that that zone is clear. It's just a matter of we ran out of colors, and so we needed to differentiate zones. So if their house was built in 1894 or something like that, it's pre-1960, and our potholing locations are on the customer side. They're on the customer side on the service line. They're they're at the main itself. And so that's where we're capturing those. If someone reconnected to a lead line, we connect that, we capture that because we're actually potholing in the street. And if you look, they're cutting these little holes in the street because they're looking at the line where it connects to the system. And what we're finding is about 10 to 11% of the lead lines out there are a residual piece of a line that if you look inside the house, or if you look at the part that's under the yard, it's been replaced as copper, but it connected to that original lead line. And back when they replaced the line, it's easy to dig up a yard. It's hard to dig up a street. And so we're by potholing at the water main. That's how we're capturing from main all the way to inside the house.
Right, and that's one of the things they're concerned about.
Yep.
So, and the other question I had, the the valves that are being installed, these big ones, on the map, and it may cut out, are the big valves being installed west of Federal also? Because the map wasn't showing, so I'm just interested.
It's right there. No, up again. Keep going. It's earlier. There it is.
Right, so I see Centennial, and then it's Federal, but it's not Westmore where the map is.
Yeah, so the locations of these valves are where working with our distribution and collections crew and looking at how they, based on we've done valve exercising over the past few years. They have a sense for whether the valves are operational or not. And the locations that we put these valves are based on their assessment of the system, dealing with line breaks and dealing with issues like that. And this is the first grouping of insertion valves that we are putting in to make sure that we're ahead of when we come in for lead replacement. So insertion valves are more expensive than just digging up and putting a new valve in.
Right.
And so we want to do this to provide control, but these locations are to support the lead program, and after discussions with our distribution and collections group of where should we put valves in to better have control of the system, to be able to shut down in a way that's not causing 10 blocks of outage, it's causing a single block of outage.
Right. So do they look at a history of problem areas where there's been over and over, like Tufts and Irving is a big problem area. There's constant breaks in that area.
So, yes, I'd say yes to that. I also want to mention that this is just the 91 valves that are included in the lead program, done by the lead contractor. We also have annual valve replacement that has been going on for a couple years. Right. I believe the first year that we did it 2 summers ago, it was 50 or 60
61.
valves. Yeah, so 61 valves. So this isn't a comprehensive view of all the valves that have been installed in the system.
Okay. This was the insertion valves directly associated with the lead program to give better control as we moved into neighborhoods. I think over the last 3 years, I was talking to Josh about this earlier today. I think he said we're upwards of 200 valves that have either been replaced or added new to provide better control. Perfect. And we'll keep doing that because there's upwards of, I believe it's 3,000 valves in the city. And not every one of them still works. And so,
as you're finding out.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, I talked to quite a few people, and this program, we had some hiccups at the beginning. We've had many conversations, and as you have worked through the hiccups, Hazen, EGL, all of, Englewood staff, you've done a fantastic job and have moved through this. And as the hiccups have, worked out, and there's always going to be a bump here and there, you all have done a fantastic job, and I want to thank you for the work that you have done, because we've had a lot of compliments, and from where it started to where you are now, tenfold improvements in everything on how the process has worked. And I think people are realizing this is really what we're doing, and it's for, the future safety for everybody and stuff. So I want to compliment you all, and thank you for being here. Thanks.
Well, thank you for that feedback, and we greatly appreciate it. And it's great to hear that you're hearing that it's going well. And then just always keep in mind that if you're hearing something from someone who's struggling with something, please reach out to us, and we will immediately contact them and work with them. Yes. So thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Peter, did you still have another staff?
Yeah, I had a really quick one, and in the interest of time, I just wanted to provide a little bit of a briefing for the Water and Sewer Board, because this is an issue that has come up at council recently. So we're in our AMI program right now, which is Advanced Metering Infrastructure Program, and we have a property that's been a challenge to work through getting the meter changed out. And it's gone back a while. We've provided a council request response that highlights the history of how we've gotten to where we are. But we're making that replacement this Thursday, and so we're going to have our crews go in, replace it. It's outside the house. But I think that the more broader challenge, and maybe this is a question for the board to think about and maybe give us some feedback, because we're struggling a little bit. And so this one property, so we have to date in the AMI program replaced 7,270 meters. Thousands of those are inside people's homes. And this is not hyperbole. I've spent more time on this one meter exchange than I have on those 7,270. And so it seems like it's utilizing a disproportionate share of resources in a way that's now causing costs to all the other customers, when it's worked pretty seamlessly with 7,270. And so we know how we do, but we continue to struggle with this one. And so I think the broader question is when do we want to provide great service. We want to respond to people. We want to provide good response. We want to provide excellent customer service. But there's a point in time where we no matter what we do, we can't seem to provide a level of service that meets the expectation of the customer, and we still have programmatic needs. And I think, we were trying to estimate the amount of hours that have spent in emails and responses and questions and discussions and field visits and meetings, and it's upwards of 50 hours to work through this one situation. And that's 50 hours is taking away from our ability to serve the other 35,000 residents of this community. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't be spending time working on difficult situations. The remaining 1,000 or so of AMI meters are the more difficult ones. So ones that have issues associated with that aren't necessarily straightforward in the yard, in a meter pit, in a basement, in a crawl space. So we know we're going to start hitting more and more of these that present more difficulty. Ultimately, as a utility, the code affords us the ability to change out the meter, because that's how we measure how much water people use and then charge them appropriately, so everybody gets charged the same amount. But I think where we're struggling on this one is we keep trying to schedule the replacement. It's met with refusal and resistance, and it's outside. It's in a meter pit. It's not even in a house. And so I think I wanted to give just a heads up to the board and everybody on the board that we're making this change this Thursday. If everything works seamlessly, it takes 10 minutes. And if you've had, I'm sure, about 10 minutes. If something does arise that creates a different issue, we will deal with it once we figure out what that issue might be. But I think the broader challenge is helping get guidance from the Water and Sewer Board of what's enough response for us in situations like this, where, like I said, I've spent more time on this one than I have on 7,270 other ones as the director of the utility. And so I think that's more just it's a heads up and more of a guidance from the board, because we're struggling.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for your patience with these individuals. It's really hard to figure out how you can find a common ground with people, creativity, and either their presence or lack of presence with what reality is. And sometimes people notice their own reality and they don't see collective reality. So it's really hard. I can hear you, and I really passionately thank you for your patience with this journey. I'm not aware of who this individual is, but I think knowledge is always power, And sometimes you give knowledge, but then it's not perceived properly from other side. So how do you put boundaries in creativity of people or their understanding of the criteria? So I reach out to Ms. Rita because I feel like she might have a better solution. But I just wanted to thank you for spending all that time.
Well, thank you. And I think our issue here is that we serve all the customers. We don't serve one customer more than another, and there's been an outsized amount of effort that is taking away from the rest of the customer base. And so we know that some are going to be more difficult and some are going to be straightforward, but when it gets this far out of whack, we struggle knowing where to say, we just need to do this because it's a simple thing. But we also want to make sure that we're providing great information, great service, understanding, minimal disruption, all those kinds of things. So, but thank you for the comments and the feedback. Chair, I don't know if I'm necessarily looking for direction as much as just more of maybe it's something to think about for a discussion at a future meeting or something like that. But it's helping us, from a balanced approach, making sure that we're serving all of our customers equally.
Yes, I think just my own 2 cents. You're right. There's limited resources that are being allocated efficiently in this scenario. It sounds like you've been what above and beyond what would be expected, and probably going forward, finding a way to be having to draw that line probably sooner makes total sense to me. But we can definitely keep this conversation. Anybody else want to slip in something for tonight? We certainly can continue it at a later session. Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you for we want to do what's right. That's basically where we're coming from, and that's our goal here.
Final topic. It's just board members' choice. Anything the board would like to raise before we adjourn? All right. Hearing none.
Wait, there's
something.
I have something, please.
Go ahead.
I know that next month I was looking at the schedule review. I like that on the agenda. Thank you very much on that. But it looks like that we are going to be looking at the budget, and I know moving forward budget stuff's going to be big. I probably will not be at the meeting, so it's my anniversary and birthday and all that in the same week, so I guess I'm going on a trip. I don't know what we're doing. It's a surprise. So you just said plan. So I'm assuming I will not be here. So just to let you know ahead of time as a courtesy. So, and if I am here,
and I think the budget information that we provide, it's remained pretty consistent, and it's following with our long-term planning approach. So you shouldn't see any significant. There shouldn't be anything that jumps out as wildly different than what we've been talking about for the past few years, both at council and here. So if you see something that you have a question about, please reach out to us and we'd be happy to give you some background.
No swimming pool and jacuzzi in my backyard or anything like that, huh?
I think our conservation plan says something about
yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for the heads up. Anything further? All right. I'll call the meeting adjourned. Have a good evening, everybody.
Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.